Okay, let's start our meeting. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, here tonight, and for those joining us remotely. We'd like to call the order the November 6th, 2023 meeting of the San Carlos Planning and Transportation Commission. We have no commissioner dialing in remotely this evening, so we have no teleconference request. And I'd like to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda.
Present.
Commissioner Garvey.
Present.
Commissioner Roof.
Present.
Vice Chair Clements.
Present.
And Chair Iacopone.
Present. I would like to remind members of the public that this meeting is a limited public forum for public comment. We're asking speakers to stay on topic. They must stay on topic if speaking to a particular agenda item. And if speaking during the general public comment period later, they must address matters within the specific matter jurisdiction of the city. If speakers fail to follow these rules or the city's rules on decorum or civility, they will be warned. And if they continue to disregard our rules, their opportunity to speak will be ended for the evening. So thank you. Our first item number 5, is the approval of the minutes from our October 16th Planning and Transportation Commission meeting. Colleagues, fellow commissioners, have you input, comments for the minutes as prepared?
No comments, but I'm happy to make a motion.
Very good. Please.
I move that we approve the October 16th, 2023 Planning and Transportation Commission meeting minutes.
Thank you. I will second. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Castaneda.
Abstain.
Commissioner Garvey.
Yes.
Commissioner Roof.
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements.
Yes.
And Chair Iacopone.
Yes. Very good. Thank you. So item number 6, public hearing. Our procedure for public hearing is staff will present a report on the history, physical features, etc. on the application, followed with staff's recommendations. The applicant will make a presentation. Thereafter, interested members of the community may speak on the proposal. When all interested parties have had an opportunity to be heard, the hearing will be closed and no further discussion from the floor can be held. The commission will then consider the evidence and make its recommendation. If you challenge a public hearing item in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing described in this notice, the public notice, or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. Speakers should fill out a speaker's form found by the door. I've got a couple already found by the door and handed into the recording secretary prior to addressing the commission. The speaker should then come up when called to the microphone to speak since the meeting is being recorded. This will assist staff in preparing the minutes, and as is our custom, all speakers either here on the floor or remotely will have 2 minutes for their public comment. So thank you for that. Our first item tonight is consideration of the project at 501 Industrial Road, APN 046090410. And this is a public hearing to consider recommending the City Council certify the final environmental impact report, adopt the plan development, zoning, and associated planned development plan, and approve the development agreement, and to consider approving the design review and transportation demand management plan for this project. And with that, I believe we have a staff presentation.
Thank you. Good evening. As introduced, this is the 501 Industrial Hotel project. Lisa Costa-Sanders, principal planner. I'm just going to give the introduction here, and then I'll be handing it off to a series of speakers. The project overview will be presented by Krista Kumas, And Steve Nowak from PlaceWorks will go over the final environmental impact report. And we also have Mark Spencer. Wow. Can't believe I did that. Mark Spencer from W-Trans will talk about the traffic analysis. And then the applicant is also here this evening to give a presentation open for public comments. Questions from the commission. So the request is to develop a 188-room hotel with surface parking and landscape improvements. The items before the Planning Commission is decision on design review and the Transportation Demand Management Plan. The items that are the final purview of the City Council that we're asking Planning Commission to make a recommendation on is the plan development zoning, plan development plan, the development agreement, and certification of the final environmental impact report. So I'll now hand it off to Chris. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good evening, Chair Iacopone and honorable commissioners. The site is located at 501 Industrial Road at the southeast corner of Holly Street and Industrial Road. It's currently has the zoning designation of landmark commercial, which supports economic development and which can include hotel uses. With the gateway overlay, signaling the entrance or exit out of San Carlos. And this particular intersection, it's one of the two main entrances into the city off of US 101. So the site plan shows that there's one point of ingress and egress at the southernmost corner of the project site, which is the southwest corner. Here on Industrial Road. The site provides circulation for fire access, which has put a constraint on additional parking and landscaping. Left turns out of the driveway would be prohibited, but the applicant's requesting left turns into the site going southbound. The project would also include roadway improvements at the Holly Street and Industrial Road intersection. In addition to the 148 spaces that are surface at-grade, the project would also provide 20 short-term parking spaces and 12 long-term bicycle parking spaces. So this perspective of the building is a view from Holly Street at Industrial Road. Here you see the two connected sections, a 6-story main guest room tower and adjoining 3-story suite. It's designed in a contemporary manner to reflect the city of San Carlos's life sciences industry. There's quite a bit of articulation on the north-facing side, separating the different levels in addition to the architectural design tower up on top. In addition, the surface parking below the main guest rooms is screened from public view. And notice how the building also steps down as you approach Industrial Road. So this perspective from Industrial Road shows that step down 3-story wing. When the trees are full grown, it's anticipated that they would provide screening from the west side of the building. This is another perspective from Industrial Road at Holly Street, which shows both wings, the main 6-story tower and the stepped down 3-story tower that runs along Industrial Road. And here's another perspective from Industrial Road going north. And you could see the gradual increase in height from that 3-story structure back to the 6-story structure. And then another perspective from the residential neighborhood that's across the street, Bayport Court. So the landscaping around the site, there's the greatest density of trees along Industrial Road to provide that screening, in addition to trees lining the perimeter of the site, and then a well-landscaped courtyard at the center that would be open to guests for the boutique hotel. In addition to the design review, the Planning Commission is also considering approval of the TDM. The TDM has proposed a number of measures to reduce vehicle trips to the site by approximately 20%. The TDM has been reviewed by the city's transportation consultant and has found it to be consistent with other similar hotel uses, trying to achieve a 20% trip reduction. So the plan development zoning and plan development plan that's under consideration by the Planning Commission to provide a recommendation to City Council would allow the maximum building height of 74 feet 4 inches. For comparison purposes, the building at 405 Industrial Road, which was approved previously, is a height of 86 feet and 10 inches. In addition, the project is seeking an increased amount of signage and also minimal rooftop signage that would be above the parapet but below the decorative rooftop feature, which may support in the future solar panels. The parking location is also part of this planned development zoning designation to allow parking within 40 feet from the street-facing property line. That allows them to provide parking around the perimeter along Industrial Road. So it would be 29 feet from the property line. Additionally, the zoning designation would permit 148 spaces, which is reduced and supported by the TDM plan and a parking demand study. And in addition, and lastly, landscaping is proposed at 12.5%. So to confer some of these benefits to the city and to approve the plan development zoning and plan development plan, the city should consider benefits that could result as part of this project. And through the development agreement, some of these benefits would be achieved, including the best potential generation of transient-oriented taxes. Also, the hotel would be available to nonprofits in San Carlos and also San Mateo County at no cost. And the development agreement covers a period of 8 years. The slide before you also provides an estimate of the total impact fees that would be collected as part of this project. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Steve Nowak from PlaceWorks and then Mark Spencer from W-Trans.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm just going to jump into where Chris left off. So we did a full environmental review on this project under CEQA. We looked at the majority of the topics that would typically be considered for a project like this, and found that all issues could be, where there were potential impacts, all issues could be mitigated to less than significant levels. And so we did not result, which meant the project does not result in any significant and unavoidable impacts. There were 2 areas that had changed since the release of the draft EIR. One area was had to do with the airport and overflights, and the applicant followed through on receiving the approval from San Mateo County Airports Board. And the second one had to do with the single point of egress and ingress, and the fire department looked at the plans and approved an exception due to the proactive fire support mechanisms and the driveway consideration to allow for just one point of ingress and egress. And so in the final EIR, you will see the list of mitigation measures, impacts and mitigation measures, and those 2 are struck out because of the activity that occurred after the draft EIR was released. And just a short timeline here. The EIR was released in August of 2023 for a 45-day public review period. There was a meeting before you on August 21st to go over the draft EIR and take any comments from the public and provide your comments on the EIR. We prepared the response to comments in the final EIR. We also prepared the mitigation monitoring and reporting program, which lists all the mitigation measures and then says when they'll be applied, by whom, and what the monitoring will look for in terms of the final results of the mitigation measures. With that, I'll turn it over to Mark Spencer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Just have two slides prepared on the transportation. One is that as part of the environmental analysis, full transportation impact analysis for the city and county guidelines was prepared, covering things both CEQA and non-CEQA related, actually. So intersection service levels, roadway performance. We looked at parking. We looked at the TDM plan and did a peer review of that. We looked at the on-site circulation, and from that, we did look at what recommendations would be appropriate for the site. And from that, we did say that, first of all, we concur that we should not have left turns out of the site onto Industrial Road, given the volume of traffic on Industrial. But also the orientation of the traffic was considered and who the residents, not the residents, but the occupants, the patrons of the hotel would be. Traffic is growing on Industrial Road, but we did not find that the trip generation from this particular project would result in a significant and unavoidable impact. We did, however, make note of the fact that there was a traffic impact fee improvement already on the books that is scheduled for Industrial and Holly and at that intersection. And that plays into the analysis as well. There was some discussion, and I think one of the key points about the project, I'm going to show this as a diagram. This is actually probably the most important recommendation, and there's a lot on here, but I'll briefly step you through what this looks like. This is the intersection of Industrial and Holly, and the project would be on the right side of the page in this case. There's a red arrow making a right turn. That's the driveway from the project itself, and you can see that. I don't know if there's a pointer on here, but I'm going to point. It's right there. If I do that, I'll just shut everything down, so I don't want to do that. Okay, so what this does show, though, is that there's a left turn pocket that's being recommended to allow left turns on southbound Industrial into the driveway. In order to do that, we want to have a separate left turn pocket. Based on the volume and the queuing capacity and all of that's needed, thank you for whoever's running the arrow. Could always count on Lisa, this is good. Right there. So that's a 75-foot bay to make that left turn. That's why there's 3 cars there. Each car is about 20 to 25 feet, let's say. These cars happen to be 20 feet on average. So that's 75 feet for a stacking of 3 vehicles, which is really all that we need, actually. That would be sufficient to allow left turn, inbound access to the driveway. In order to make that happen within the available space on Industrial Road, it would also change the northbound left turn pocket that's there now. Those blue cars towards the top part of the diagram, you'll see there's 7 cars stacked there. All right. Now, that currently is a bit longer of a left turn queue. It has more space than it typically needs today. That's been field measured. But also, this is looking out in the future. With changes that are happening in East San Carlos, with other development that's happening in the area, how much space does that left turn pocket need, particularly for that northbound Industrial Road left turn onto Holly? Now, that was reviewed not only by us independently, but also by the applicant's traffic engineer, who was asked to prepare the street modification, and we've peer reviewed that as well. This would be sufficient at 150 feet, which is what is shown here. That's about 6 to 7 vehicles. It's actually shown at 160, I believe, if I'm looking at the diagram correctly. And then there's space in between the 2 back-to-back left turn pockets. This also shows the additional through lane on northbound Industrial Road. That is the traffic impact fee project. Right? So that's also part of this. So you'll see the change in geometry a little bit on Industrial Road northbound. It also includes the bike lane. That's really hard to see. But along the curb line going northbound Industrial Road, there's a bike lane that continues all the way up until the crosswalk at Holly, and then it transitions over to Holly. So all of that is still intact and included with this plan. Also with the right turn only out, and that's the right turn only sign on the bottom right. So all of this is part and parcel to the access, and as Steve Noack was saying, this has been reviewed by fire, and I can take more questions on this when we conclude the presentation, but I just wanted to sort of point out that this is probably one of the key things in terms of transportation as part of our analysis of the project. With that, we're going to conclude. I'm going to turn it back over to Chris, and we're going to...
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.
So public notice was mailed to all property owners within 300 feet of the project site on June 7th, 2023, and published on in the newspaper June 8th. Oh, sorry.
I think we have flashbacks to the summer.
Yes.
It was published more recently than that.
Sorry. Yes. So notice was mailed to all property owners more recently than what's shown on your slide. Thank you. But the formal motion for consideration by the Planning and Transportation Commission is up on the screen. It's also within the agenda packet towards the back end of the staff report for those in the audience. And with that, staff and city's consultants can take questions in regards to this presentation.
Good, thank you very much. Commissioners, let's go through any clarifying questions here for city staff or the consultants. Maybe we'll take one or let's say two, and then we'll loop back if there are others. Commissioner Garvey?
Thank you, Chair. I was looking back at my notes and from our last draft EIR hearing, one of the things I thought was still in process was a flood elevation certificate. I thought we had applied for that, but we hadn't received it yet. Can someone comment, has that application process come to a close, and did we receive the flood elevation certificate?
I do not, we don't know the answer. That's part of what's required for.
I see, okay.
But I know that Public Works has, I think we talked about this last time, they've reviewed the drainage plan in light of the flood conditions on that site, and they've approved the design for retention, for
Okay.
stormwater retention on the site.
That's helpful, thank you. I believe that
release.
the building was built like 3 feet above what it needed to be built
Correct.
as a part of that, and it sounds like that's all still going forward. And okay, thanks for the clarification. That's my only question so far. Thank you, Chair.
Good, thank you. Vice Chair Clemens?
Thank you, Chair. Lisa, your memory is correct. The staff report says that the notices were mailed October 26th and published on the 26th. Yes. I just had one question, which is, I think, Chris, you had said fairly quickly, but I wanted to hear a little bit more, that it was that fire access was what was limiting the landscaping amount and the parking location. Can you explain a little bit more about that, please?
Sure. So there's a certain width that fire needs to provide ladder access to the structure. And so in order to provide that fire access, the drive lanes need to be so wide. And so that limited parking, I believe there was originally parking planned on the southeast corner, closer to the building. So that kind of one way. And then some of the arrangements of the trash enclosures had also changed. And so that kind of took away some of that space to provide additional parking or other areas to consider where landscaping could go.
And the staff report said that parking where the standard is 40 feet from, I guess, the curb or the edge of the property line, that it was 29. Where is that referring to on this diagram?
Thank you for that question. So the property line is as it reads from Industrial Road. So on the western side of the property, on the side closest to the parking, or closest to Industrial Road, which I believe is kind of in the middle area of the western structure, kind of where the entrance to the lobby is. That's the most narrow point. So that falls within that 40 feet.
Okay, got it. And parking was already reduced over what it could have been, so it must be necessary to park it in the way that it is right here for the parking that's provided. So can you also just clarify where the landscaping may have been affected adversely, the amount, and that's why it's short of the requirement due to the ingress egress requirements?
And the applicant will get into a little bit more of this in their presentation, so more so in regards to the shape of the site, it's a quarter circle, which kind of limited the arrangement of parking, and the city standards required one space per guest unit. And so they needed to provide a certain number of parking spaces. So that was kind of the first consideration. And then being able to balance the parking with the landscaping. The additional landscaping could have gone in that southeast corner or to the north of the site. But they do provide, so the gateway landscaping element, there's certain minimum requirements that the applicant was due to provide, and they've provided a wider area of landscaping for that gateway element.
Okay, thank you. And just restating, staff is comfortable with the areas where the standard was not met, but staff is still advocating approval under the proposal.
Right. Given the constraints of the site, the applicants sought to be as consistent as possible with the city's development standards, and they'll also touch upon other ways that they've tried to accomplish providing landscaping on the site.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Commissioner Castaneda, a question for staff at this point? No. Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Roof?
Thank you, Chair. One question about that right turn only provision. What route would cars that want to go south take to get to southern destinations?
If they're going back south, more likely than not, they're going to make a left on Holly. If U-turns are allowed, they may try and do a U-turn. It depends on where to the south they want to go. There's also an opportunity to just go south on 101 and then come back in, depending on how far south they want to go. Quite frankly, in pretty typical in this area, what we've seen based on, first of all, traffic on Old County Road, on El Camino, on Industrial Road, there's a lot of short trips on 101, all up and down the peninsula. So circulating around, while it might seem a little counterintuitive, but we do see that quite a bit, where someone might hop onto 101 and then get off again, at Whipple or further down, depending on how far they need to go. If it's a local trip, more likely than not, given the land uses and where they're likely to go, they'll make a left on Holly and then again on Old County or El Camino.
Is a U-turn allowed as you approach Holly Street?
I knew you were going to ask that, and I'm just,
You set yourself up for that one.
I really did, and I know, so many intersections in the city, but I don't think it is. No, it is prohibited.
Doesn't seem like it would be, but.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Very good, thank you. And no questions for staff at this point for me. So I think we have our applicant here and a presentation from the applicant.
Good evening again, Commissioners. My name is E.C. Liu with Holly Hotel Group, which is developing a hotel site. I do have, I hope my consultants are online via Zoom. Kylene, are you there? Kylene from Hexagon Transportation. Yeah, Kylene, great. Thanks, Colleen. Lisa, I don't know if you have the. Oh yeah, but it's not the.
Point.
No, the other presentation, the other PDF.
Oh, for the landscape?
Left turn.
Do you just advance it's in here?
Yeah. I mean, it's
Okay.
It's in there, right?
It's not part of this presentation, but
We combined it.
yeah, it's okay. Oh, you combined it? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. This will do. Colleen, sorry. So this is we actually engaged Hexagon Transportation to do a study on the left turn into our site. They have a whole analysis for this. This is the salient image. Colleen, would you be able to go and explain this this particular slide?
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I believe Mark Spencer already explained all of in previous his presentation. So I believe he said pretty clearly that the analysis shows that left turn project, even though providing a left turn into the project will shorten the current left turn to Holy Street, but it's going to be the future left turn traffic to Holy can be accommodated within that shortened left turn storage. Mark Spencer from WTran already explained those.
Okay, and we could go into more detail as we have the full report. Colleen, thanks very much. I also have Tom Holloway, who's our landscape architect on the line. He'll go into other issues raised during the public comment period regarding the trees along Industrial Road and also the landscape coverage percentage. Tom, are you on the line?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, Tom, thanks.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I'm here. Do you want me to go through those items right now, EC?
Yeah, let me get to this.
It's towards the end.
Oh, okay.
Sure. So
yeah, we'll do the trees first. Yeah.
yeah, with regard to the trees, I think the important element is we got some really good information from the neighborhood, which has helped us in the tree selection. Obviously, the people that live around there know what it's like to garden and deal with their landscape. So the information about the potential of kind of brackish water or a little more higher salt content in the water and in the soil has really made us stop and think about what tree species we're going to use there. And we've got a list of several evergreen tree species that will really fill out and do nice in that type of soil. But what our main plan is once the mass grading starts or is completed, to get a really good soil agronomy test to tell us exactly what minerals and salts and all that sort of stuff are in the soil specifically at that location. And then work with the city to select the tree species that's best going to meet the requirements that we have for screening and size and all that sort of stuff. While being able to thrive in that condition. So, some of the species that we've looked at include like Italian stone pine and Monterey pine, and there's the Catalina ironwood, and several different species, but I don't know how in depth we want to get in that right now.
Sure, Tom. Maybe we could address those perhaps later if there are any questions, but we can discuss the revised site coverage percentage ratio for landscaping, and I'll go to that. I'll go to that slide, Tom.
Sure. As we were going through this, we realized that we were a little short. So I went back and looked at our landscape area calculations, and we had noticed that we've got stormwater treatment that's up on the roof level that is landscape, and it was not included. We also have some synthetic lawn that's on the site, and I can't see the screen now, unfortunately, but there we go. Now I can. Okay, yeah, so by the time we included all those elements together, we actually got 15.07% of the site is in landscape. So by including all that, we are just squeaking by, barely meeting the city's minimum.
Right, and Tom, we discussed this today. The lower right corner was really pointy behind the garbage bins. We did not count that in because in our previous site plan, we were assuming we would have a driveway connecting to the Residence Inn parking lot.
Exactly, that
right,
little corner
which was
that you see
next
that triangle gave us a decent amount of landscape that
Yeah.
helped bump us up to another 400 or 500 square feet. So
It was rejected by our neighbors, so it was specifically for the fire truck. Yeah.
oh, and that's the other thing I wanted to point out. We also have that vertical green wall in the courtyard that we've calculated as part of the landscape space too. So it's about almost 50 feet long and about 8 feet tall, and it's a green living wall that we're going to have along there. So that is also included as part of the landscape. I think it comes out to about 380 feet, something like that.
Yeah, and on that issue, Lisa and I discussed we may have to look at that and
Okay.
whether or not it counts. Yeah. So
But we're much closer to 15% than we are to 12.5%.
correct. Right. Well, Tom, thanks very much. So both Tom and Kylie are on the line to answer any other questions. Also, our environmental and geotechnical engineer from PSI Intertech are also on the line, as well as our architects from RYS Architects. Thank you.
Thank you, EC. Back to my colleagues, and we could start with Commissioner Roof for the applicant. Follow-up questions? Okay. Commissioner Castaneda? Okay, very good. Vice Chair Clements? Very good. And Commissioner Garvey?
One question about the solar that I understand is going to go on the rooftop overhang. When we talked at the last meeting, it wasn't clear how much solar was going to go up there and what percentage of the electrical needs of the hotel would be met by that solar. Can you add any more detail to that?
Unfortunately, not tonight, but that's something that we would be, getting our mechanical engineer to MEP engineers to work on. In addition to the structure, the actual awning to make it hurricane or typhoon safe. So that's our next step to work on that.
I see. So that's a next step. All right. And I guess one comment, I believe it's approved that if you wanted to, you could have a rooftop sign. My hope is that that rooftop sign doesn't go on the overhang and take away any square footage that might otherwise be allocated to solar panels.
Oh, no, yeah.
Okay.
It would not.
All right. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just two questions for me, and EC, I just want to clarify. In trying to distinguish between solar installed and solar ready on when the project gets C of A, which will it be?
We're looking to solar installed.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then maybe for staff, is that part of one of the development conditions?
It is not currently. It is covered under the building code, the requirement for solar.
It doesn't need to be. They won't get C of A without solar installed.
There is an exception process if they show that there's insufficient roof space, but generally, developers have been able to provide solar on the buildings, is what we're seeing. Yes.
Okay, and then specifically, the reason for asking is because the last time we had this conversation around, I think as Commissioner Garvey pointed out, that awning, and the reason for going up the added height was to create space for solar, and therefore it feels like they should go together on completion of the project rather than at some later date.
So the thought is you're supportive of the additional height for the design feature of that tower with the requirement that it contains solar or an equivalent amount of solar be placed elsewhere on the roof.
Yeah, I mean,
Adding there, Greg.
Well, you went one step beyond where I was thinking, so thank you. I'm
just worried that what if, structurally it can't hold the solar or some strange reason, but yes.
We if I remember correctly, and I might not, so I might need help here, but I thought we were talking about added height for the purpose of what we said. And if we don't get the solar up there, then we don't need the added height.
So I think that from the developer's perspective, it's a design element, and I don't believe it's specifically designed for solar, but that's an opportunity.
We did have solar in mind.
Yeah, okay. So I think that could be, looking at the city attorney, tied together as a condition of approval. Okay, yeah, so we can circle back.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you very much. And maybe this is just a point of clarification. In the packet, there was a comment around 148 spaces, and that was a great reduction from the original. But then there was another comment about, but if some calculation had been followed, it would have been 122. And I wasn't sure if, like, we should have been reading that or ignoring it, or what the story was. Yeah, it was in, and I didn't write down the page, I apologize, but it was just a line that said, this was not as low as the 122 if the calculation something or other had been followed. And
thank you. So
I didn't know what it meant.
Right, thanks. So the 122 spaces refers to the ratio that came about through their parking demand study. So, so given the number of rooms and given the example that their consultant Hexagon looked at, it had indicated that 122 spaces would be sufficient for a project of that size from the applicant's own study.
Okay, so do I interpret that as we've got 26 more than needed?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Garvey?
Thank you, Chair. And that raised an issue in my mind, and I wanted to follow up on that. I didn't know how to think about how much parking we should make available or require a hotel to have in light of the fact that so many more people arrive and leave hotels using rideshare. And I understand there's a city policy that the hotel needs to comply with regarding number of stalls, and there's TDM numbers that they need to meet. But I'm wondering if we are right-sizing our policy given the large number of people that are choosing to use rideshare. And I couldn't figure out how to resolve that issue in my mind. So I just wanted to ask you, how do we comply with a city policy that maybe is current, but maybe more and more people are using rideshare and the requirement maybe needs to be revisited? Can someone add some clarity to that?
Yeah, I'll start the answer on that and hopefully can address your question. So as the applicant stated, and we independently verified, the actual parking demand based on a hotel of this size and nature and location is less than what the city code would typically require at this point. That's not unusual. City codes, particularly on parking for these types of developments, tend to be a little bit higher, more conservative. You are right, there's this trend that's been going on for several years where there's fewer and fewer need to park vehicles. Think about the clientele of who's going to be going to this hotel. People coming from the airport, people going to the life science centers, the businesses in East San Carlos is largely, I think, what who are going to be the clientele for the hotel, for this hotel. So yes, you could think about, well, it's going to be overparked. That's very likely to be true early on. The city is undergoing a separate process right now to look at shared parking and TDM and where are we going in the future in terms of how much parking and what kind of policies to have in light of the very trends and the, where we are all going as, communities on the peninsula in terms of transportation. That being said, if we cut it too close, or you think, well, maybe they only need, 122 spaces or 130 spaces, why can't we just take a little more, put some more landscaping in? In this particular area, I don't normally say this, but you don't want to run the risk of underparking something. and then having to think about, well, where would the vehicles go? What if they're fully booked one night? Then you start bleeding out into neighborhoods or onto the street or into other business parks or whatever it might be. Or you have people in the Residence Inn at the Marriott next door going, hey, wait a minute, you're using some, you know. So you want to make sure that you size it correctly, that you can handle the demand that you need for your patrons, for your staff. And that's, I think, where we're going with this right now. As the future continues and more folks will take Uber, Lyft, you know, whatever it might be, then that space, and maybe in the future it gets repurposed, but we're not there yet. And the city policies and the way it allows for what we can do right now is kind of we're in that, you know, middle zone right now where we're not there yet where we can actually absolutely say, let's take out more parking and let's do something different with the space.
I hear that. That's very helpful. Can you add any clarity to the hotel next door, the Residence Inn? Do they have a similar ratio of parking to guest rooms, and are they dramatically over or under parked?
I cannot speak to that. I don't have survey information. I don't know if the applicants can speak to that, but no, I can't speak to that. I will say, though, that part of what makes this work, and the applicant has a very good transportation demand management program. Hexagon did a really nice job, put together a good TDM program that allows for reduction not only in trips, but also in parking demand. And we went through that, and it not only will meet the city's requirements for that 20% reduction, which also allows for the parking reduction from city code.
Thank you. That was a very helpful discussion. Thank you, Chair.
Very good, thank you. No questions for me. I think we're ready to move to public comment. So let me just take a quick check. Good, we will. So we're going to move to our public comment period. I have 2 speaker requests here. For anyone who might be watching or participating remotely, we're going to ask you, please, to, at this time, raise your hand on the Zoom. And we'll give you, say, about a minute. And at the end of that minute, all of the people that would like to speak, if your hand is raised, we'll note you. And if you haven't raised your hand, or anyone who hasn't raised their hand in that period, you will not be eligible for joining the public comment period this evening on this topic. Do we have any other speaker cards here in the audience? No? 2? Okay. Very good. Nicole, why don't you take stock of number of hands raised, please?
Yes, we currently have 1 hand raised.
Okay, very good. Would you please note that speaker, and we'll take the 2 speakers here in the audience first, and then we'll hear from the speaker that's raised their hand online, okay?
Okay.
Okay, great. So, Chester Haley. And then the other card I have is from Mr. Fred Wood.
Hello. Good evening, Planning and Transportation Commission. My name is Chester Haley. I'm a field representative out of the local Carpenters 217 that covers the city of San Carlos. Today, I would like to discuss some important topics that we should consider when it comes to planning for our community's workforce. Labor standards like healthcare, state-certified apprenticeship, and local hiring. These factors play a significant role in creating a strong and thriving workforce. This new development has potential opportunity to embrace the labor standards. We have attempted multiple times to reach out to the developers, and they have yet to respond to us. In addition, we are here to try to set up a future meeting. My team and I look forward to reaching out once again to have a more in-depth conversation with the developers. I look forward to the coordination with them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming this evening, and good news is you've got the developer here, the owner, to speak to. Very good, thank you. Fred Wood. Good evening, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Commission. My name's Fred Wood. I do live at 919 McHugh. Some of your pictures right there were taken from the street right outside of my house. I do have some concerns. I'm not for or against this project, but the concerns are this. It appears to me that we're going to be impeding the flow of water. Their map clearly shows that the culvert that runs along Highway 101 will disappear, which is flood containment for most of the area. I do understand that they're going to be putting underground storage for the sum of so many gallons of water. What happens with that water during the high water seasons, during the rain, when their system fills up, they're going to force water into our gravity system, causing more flooding in our neighborhood. Where else can I go here? Raising a piece of property 6 feet, it already is at ground level, perfect. If the water gets high, it flows towards the freeway, towards that culvert and out of the area. With it being raised 6 feet, they suffer no ill will towards high water or rain, and they definitely ain't gonna feel it any other time. The other issue I have is this year, 2023, we suffered immensely with that high water getting polluted by sewage. So now I'm gonna throw another 180-something restrooms into a sewage system that was not established for that. So we've got 300 homes feeding a 24-inch sewer main, and now we're gonna throw another 180-something home or restrooms onto that. It's all concerning to me because the kids from the area tend to go down to the pond that sits out inside of my house and they wanna play in it. It's winter time. Kids love puddles. Sorry about my time, but we have to tell them that no, it's now a biohazard. So please, when you're doing this vote, please consider everything that's going to happen to our area, our neighborhood, because we are only one block off. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Nicole, will you please queue up the person who raised their hand?
Yes, Jeff Maley, you should be able to speak.
So my name is Jeff Maley. I live on Hall Street, and my concern, I think, been echoed by a lot of what I saw in the presentations tonight was about traffic. I'm really concerned about that left turn from industrial into the property, and I say that because as it is, if you're coming, was it east on Holly off the freeway, and you want to make a left turn onto industrial, that's already super dicey because the rightmost left turn lane is often people turning into the gas station. So then you have just the left lane where you're somewhat safe, and now this property going up is potentially impacting that. I saw the drawing of the proposed reusage of the existing turn lane to provide that left turn, and I think that's a good idea. I will say the drawing that I saw tonight shows 2 lanes going straight through northbound on industrial, but it's not how industrial is. I drive it all the time, and I'm looking at the street view today. There's only 1 lane going straight, 2 lanes going right to the freeway and Holly, and then one lane going left. So, that will be a more significant repurposing of that lane than maybe has been presented this evening. As always, I'm just very concerned about anything that's going to increase the risk of traffic accidents and further cause traffic issues on that intersection. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us tonight in your comments. And with that, I think we have no more speaker cards here. That brings us to the conclusion of public comment. So I would entertain a motion to close public comment.
I move that we close public comment on this item.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Why don't we go commissioner by commissioner, get your any comments And if you have a position as to what you're thinking, it'd be good to hear you share that. Commissioner Roof, would you like to start?
Sure. Collect my thoughts here for a second. Overall, I'm in favor of the proposal. I think the scale of the building is consistent with the other development in the area. They did I thought, a very sensitive design in having the lower height on the building that faces the residential neighborhood, and the curved part of the building is a dramatic design. I think it's really cool. It's kind of it would be a notable building at the entry to from 101 to our city. So it's fulfills the gateway desired outcome we wanted there. So the overall structure of it and scale seems appropriate. The parking number, I always struggle with this. It seems like you're between a rock and a hard spot on the number of parking spots. But it seems a reasonable compromise to me. It's less than the city's rule of thumb, about 1 spot per guest room. It's more than the TDM plan estimate, and so to me that seems like the proposal landed in a reasonable spot. But one concern I have, particularly for the overall our plans for the East Side Innovation District, is some sort of a more holistic transportation plan with a shuttle. And I think I gather a shuttle is sort of a hot potato and nobody wants to deal with it, but it just makes so much sense from a practical point of view if there could be such a thing. So lobbying the city staff to try to find a way to make that happen, and it can't obviously be a requirement for just this hotel. It's got to be an integrated plan, and so it's not an easy thing to achieve, but a shuttle would be useful. The left turn into the property, I'm okay with the design there. I did notice the caller mentioned the lane discrepancy from what the picture showed and what's on the ground, and I pulled up the Google Street View, and indeed, so I'm wondering, maybe a question for city staff, are they going to reline the entire street, or and it'll make it come out the way that these conceptual drawings look?
Yeah, and I think you might have noticed the right turn lane looks a little bit different as well. So that's the ultimate configuration that's been designed by the city, and hopefully we'll be able to implement. The transportation impact fees are based on that design and that configuration. And land from this property has already been acquired to accommodate that wider configuration. So you've got the sidewalk, a bike lane, 2 rights onto the freeway, 2 going through, and then the left turn. So it's a wider configuration than it is today. And the other improvement that you may have noticed on there also is a dedicated bike and pedestrian path that runs along the side of the building as well, and that'll be an overpass to go over the freeway, similar to, I think, what you may experience on Ralston Overpass. So it'll be separate from the travel lane, because right now it's a little tricky to take your bike or walk over there. And then if I could just make one more comment on your shuttle. We have been in discussions with the Alexandria development on their larger project for them to be the project that starts up the Transportation Management Association and the shuttle system. And so we've been putting conditions of approvals on all projects you've seen to require participation in a TMA once it's formed. So thank you.
Thank you. Those are valuable additional bits of information, actually, and they make me even more comfortable with it. So that's all the comments I have for the moment.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Commissioner Castaneda.
I also generally approve of this project. I think that the design elements and the way the height is staggered, the way the buildings are positioned is going to make a nice gateway entry to the city. And I did note comments, we could have had a much more industrial type building that went in here. So I think this is preferable to that. And I agree on the parking that I think what they've come up with is probably the best compromise. I'm all for the shuttle, so I'm very happy to hear that news, particularly in a project like this where it's a hotel, where it just seems the clientele would benefit greatly from a shuttle. I think the landscaping plan is very good. I like the courtyard, and because it's an upscale hotel, I'm interested in the analysis that indicates that there'll be a restaurant that could be used by the community, including some of the other high-tech buildings in the area. And I'm also happy about the inclusion of allowing the nonprofits to be able to hold meetings for free there. I think that's a very nice effect. I think the traffic, in fact, I drove down there again today and checked it out, and with what you've talked about, the addition to the road, I think this is going to be all right, and the entry into the lot is at the south side of it, so it's as far away from the Holly intersection as you can get, which I think is very helpful. I think that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Commissioner. Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you, Chair. As I did the last time this project came in front of us, I admit that I'm excited that it is a different and boutique kind of hotel that is locating at this site, which is a nice gateway into San Carlos. I understand why some of the variation between our standards and the design and the requirements for landscaping and parking are necessary, and I concur that, I'm not a transportation demand expert. I do think the resulting ratio of spaces that's consistent with the next door property as well and lower than the city standards, I think that that's appropriate to not go too far down, because it also could limit the usefulness of the property long-term or their investment interests. And because there's really no overflow parking on the main street. There's nowhere for cars to go, so. I think the trees being exceeded, the standard 49 trees versus 37 required is very good for that location. I realize the height is higher than the city's standard, but I do think it is not dissimilar from another property that we have approved in that general area, and also because of the site and because it is against the highway, I think the increased height is completely fine and compatible. I did hear the member of the public, Fred, talk about, his concern about water, and I did notice, I looked quickly for citations of water in the environmental impact report, the Q&A section, and actually his comment there was addressed for quite a while by the report authors, and I found, and those are pages, 5-20 and 21, so I don't know if he had read that, but it seemed like the arguments were good as to the water management kind of features of the property and the stormwater pollution prevention system. So I found all of that to be fine. So I do think the project is very attractive also. I enjoy the variation in the colors and patterns, and I am not opposed to the sign being higher than our standards, but I guess, especially because of the additional screen and the effort to kind of keep it contextual and not stick way up above the building, it looks attractive to me. I did have a question, maybe for our attorney, on the development agreement. And just wanted to understand better, get development agreements, in my understanding, are when there is extraordinary benefit to the city. And so just wanted to double check, the impact fees being paid is not extraordinary benefit, that's just normal. And the amount of the meeting space being given free to the community is very admirable. And just wanted to double check, overall, was that finding easily made with this property, that it was an extraordinary benefit to the city and therefore meritorious of the development agreement?
Well, like all the development agreements that the city negotiates with developers, we have that in mind in negotiating terms, and each project is different. Our economists value the added value to a project and coming up with what a reasonable community benefit is. And so my understanding is that's what happened in this particular project. Because it's a hotel versus an office building, there's different economic factors in play. So I think you can make the finding.
Great, thank you, Craig. So with that, I like a lot of things about this project. Looked back at my notes, liked a lot of things about it last time as well, and I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. And Commissioner Garvey.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things I liked about this project is the location. Not only is it near the freeway and near freeway ramps, but it's less than a 10-minute walk to the Caltrain station, very advantageous, and it's near, I believe it's 4 bus routes. This is nice not only for guests, but also for employees. The other thing I liked about this project related to the design, I really like how the shape of the building embraces the shape of the property. I thought the courtyard was a very attractive extension of the lobby, and I liked the vertical landscaping, those more denser trees out that acted as a screen on industrial. I thought that was very attractive. I also echo some of my fellow commissioners' comments that the lower height on the building as it steps down and gets closer to industrial was also very attractive. And my last comment related to something we talked about last time, which was water. We talked a little bit about flooding, but we also talked about the drought and is there a way that we could save or use stored water on site for landscaping if and when we get into another drought situation. And there were, I think it was 40 or 48-inch diameter pipes. I think it was underneath the parking structure, and there was some discussion last time as to whether any of that water could be stored and used in the event of a drought. And my hope is that the dialogue around that issue continues, and there may be a way to store some water on site. But I am supportive of the project and echo many of the other comments made by my colleagues. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Garvey. I think you've all picked up on my points on design. I like the way it looks, the way it sits on the property, the step back, the overall aesthetic. It was good looking last time. It's good looking this time. And I actually like that framework at the top. I think it's good looking. I'll come back to that, but I'm supportive of the height because I think it's a good design element and because of what it's going to be used for, hopefully. On the parking, one of the things I'm mindful of is that there is going to be one of the larger ballrooms, I believe, in the area in the property, and I can imagine that it may not happen once a quarter or a couple times, a few times a year, but there will be a need for extraordinary parking. So good to know that, again, we've threaded the needle and found and seems like an adequate balance. Lower than code, in concert with the TDM, and understanding it's maybe a little bit higher than a baseline, but that seems okay. Regarding the environmental impact report, that's one of the first things we have to discuss this evening and approve. And from my point of view, all of the the impacts seem to be appropriately mitigated. They're either included in the development agreement or the conditions of approval. And so that all seems both consistent with what we talked about last time in this final stage. So I'm very comfortable with that. I think Vice Chair Clements, you raised the point about the drainage. I am sensitive to how development can disrupt flow, and to the extent that there is a culvert there that might be disturbed, I hope the city took that into consideration when redesigning the lanes. So I'll just say I hope that's the case. And I do appreciate the on-site mitigation issues that have been put in place for storage. When I was thinking Gateway, I sort of expected a Welcome to San Carlos sign in that little arc, but then I realized that maybe it kind of faces the wrong way, so maybe it's not that impactful. Therefore, the building will have to be the gateway. Really the thing I would wrap with, two things. First, I am overall supportive, but I would like to propose a condition to my colleagues, and that is a linkage between installation of solar in some amount and the approval of the project and a certificate of occupancy or whatever the final step is. And the reason, again, is because we approved the height on the basis that that's what it was going to be used for, with the alternative that maybe some has to go on the roof. So I'm open to that balance. So supportive with the one condition.
I would be supportive of that as well.
I would as well.
Yes, I'm supportive.
Thank you. Well, we have, I believe, sorry, Commissioner Roof.
I also would support that.
Great, thank you. We have, I believe, three well, maybe we should make sure that this is okay with the city staff and our attorney.
We just discussed where that condition, on which motion it would be, and we think it's because it's related to the design and the height, that it's probably in the design review certificates where you'd put that condition.
Okay, very good, thank you. I believe we have three subparts to our motion and approval this evening. The first one is with regard to the environmental impact report. So I suggest we take these in turn. So if someone would make a motion on the first portion.
I'll do that. I move that the Planning and Transportation Commission make the required findings and adopt the resolution recommending the City Council certify the final environmental impact report and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan. I further move that the Planning and Transportation Commission make the required findings and, oh, did you want to do these separately?
Let's do the first one first.
Okay.
One at a time.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Very good. And do we have a second on that first part?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you. Roll call.
Commissioner
please.
Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Thank you. Then we have the second portion.
Do it. I further move that the Planning and Transportation Commission make the required findings and adopt the resolution recommending the City Council adopt the ordinance approving the planned development plan and adopting the zoning map designating the site plan development PD and adopt the resolution recommending the City Council approve the development agreement.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes.
I might as well finish it.
Chair, would you, yes, but with the chair's modification for the last one. So I'm happy to make it, or
Please.
okay. I further move that the Planning and Transportation Commission approve the design review and transportation demand management plan, subject to the conditions listed in the code compliance certificate, and as amended to require the installation of solar as a requirement in the design review certificate for the development of a 188-room hotel at 501 Industrial Road, APN 046-090-410, for the reasons incorporated in the staff report.
And I will second.
Commissioner Castaneda.
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey.
Yes.
Commissioner Roof.
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements.
Yes.
And Chair Iacopone.
Yes. Thank you all. Congratulations. I'm sure we'll all enjoy a meal at the restaurant, and when guests are in town, having them check out Indigo.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Our second item this evening, 6B, is a public hearing on the proposed amendments to the City of San Carlos's municipal code. This is regarding Title 18 and zoning sections 18.15, general site regulations 18.21, performance standards, and 18.28 zoning clearance for consistency with a comprehensive airport land use compatibility plan for the environs of the San Carlos Airport. And we have a staff report this evening.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners. Akanksha Chopra, Associate Planner. The item I'll be presenting this evening is the zoning ordinance amendments for compliance with the Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan for the environs of San Carlos Airport, also called ALUCP. On this item, I'm joined by Nicholas Hamilton from Good City Company via Zoom, and Lisa Costa-Sanders, who is present with us here in the chamber, or will be shortly. As part of the agenda, I'll cover the background, proposed zoning amendments, and next steps. The state law requires establishment of airport land use commissions for counties with public airports. The airport land use commissions are responsible for development of ALUCPs. CCAG is designated as the Airport Land Use Commission for San Mateo County and prepares the ALUCP for the environs of San Carlos Airport. State law further requires cities' general plans, specific plans, and land use regulations to be in compliance with the ALUCPs. As the Commission recalls, the city updated its zoning ordinance as part of Housing Element Update in January of this year. Because these updates included increases to height limits, the city was required to submit these changes to CCAG for consistency review and determination. As part of its review, CCAG requested the city to make amendments that would ensure compliance with the ALUCP. In response to this, city staff proposed amendments that added requirements for ALUCP compliance in several sections of the zoning ordinance. CCAG reviewed these amendments and were satisfied. On October 12, 2023, CCAG granted the consistency determination for these zoning ordinance amendments. Next, we have a brief overview of the ALUCP. The ALUCP covers 4 key policy areas, including safety, airspace protection, noise, and overflight notification. The policies essentially work to manage safety, health, and quality of life of residents and workers in the environs of San Carlos Airport. As shown on map on the screen, the plan is divided into 2 areas. Area A, outlined in red, is where the real estate disclosures are required. Entire city of San Carlos is included in this. Area B, outlined in green, is where policies and projects, if required, are reviewed by CCAG for consistency determination. On this slide, we have the overview of zoning ordinance amendments. The main changes to zoning ordinance were made to the section 18.21.150, formerly airspace protection. The amended section is renamed to Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan Consistency, and now includes requirements for compliance with ALUCP policies for all projects subject to ALUCP. I will share the specifics of the amendments on the next slide. Minor changes were made to 3 other sections, the general site regulations, noise, and zoning clearance, which now refer to the amended section 18.21.150. This slide covers the amendments to section 18.21.150. This section is amended to refer to requirements contained in ALUCP for compliance with policies related to safety, airspace protection, and noise policies of ALUCP for all proposed development projects, alterations, and change of uses subject to ALUCP. Requirement for real estate disclosure by sellers and leasers of real estate property within the ALUCP covered area. Requirement for overflight notification, which essentially states that within the airport influence area B, all new residential projects excluding additions or ADUs shall include a recorded overflight notification requirement as part of condition of approval. This won't affect existing residences in the area. The FAA requirements, and a section that shares provision under the state law that gives City Council the authority to override Airport Land Use Commission determination. After having a consistent zoning ordinance, only proposed land use policy actions go to CCAG Board for consistency determination. These include the general plans, specific plans, zoning ordinance, or PD plans, or projects. Per procedure established under the ALUCP, all land use policy actions go to CCAG for consistency determination first before coming to Planning and Transportation Commission and City Council. Following the Planning and Transportation Commission recommendation, City Council will have its first reading of the zoning ordinance amendments on November 27th and second reading on December 11th. After the second reading and adoption of ordinance, the amendments will become effective on January 10th, 2024. The formal motion is on the screen. This concludes our presentation, and we are happy to take any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Commissioners, clarifying questions, comments? Vice Chair Clements.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I'm just wondering if you could go back to the slide that says what kinds of actions, this one. So anything regarding the general plan designation for sites in this area, anything regarding specific plans, any zoning, and any PD plans or projects in these areas would first go to ALEC and then, well, or CCAG review.
Right, yes.
Got it. And then it comes to us. Is that the case today? And is this set of proposed actions, is this new, and what's the thought process behind this list, if so?
Thank you for the question. So these were a part of the ALUCP even before, so it's not a new requirement. But as of now, we do not have the compliant zoning ordinance. So because of that, we had to take not just these land use policy actions, but also any proposed projects, PDs, for example, which changes zoning or changes anything. So after having the compliant zoning ordinance, we'll only need to take these land use policy actions.
I see. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioner Roof?
This is kind of a new territory for me, so I need some help understanding what we're doing here. With this rule, with this change to our ordinance, is it just introducing a process that would be used in the future, or is it actually aligning the language to be consistent at this time?
That's a great question. Thank you so much. So yes, exactly. We are including a process that will make sure all the proposed developments that will be subject to ALUCP will need to make sure they are compliant with the ALUCP. So all the amendments that we have proposed essentially are adding the procedure to say that, hey, you'll need to make sure you're compliant with the ALUCP, which was not previously part of our zoning ordinance.
So a result of this would be it makes it more clear or enforces the role of the Planning Commission and the City Council in how these policies are defined?
Exactly, yes. So it basically embeds the administrative process into the zoning ordinance, so making it much more clearer not just for applicants, but also for the staff and the decision makers. So yeah, we are essentially not introducing any new requirements, but saying this is the procedure that has to be followed when proposed development that are subject to ALUCP comes before the city.
Okay, that's really helpful. An additional question, is this CAG, the Airport Land Use Commission, a body that holds public meetings? It has a charter, and I'm just not familiar with how it works. Is it something that, so if, for instance, the airport wanted to do rocket launches from there or something, I mean, would that be something that we would hear about in a public notice?
Thank you for the question. I'll defer to
That might be directed to me. They are a Brown Act body, and so they do have public meetings. The development team and the city team typically attends the meetings when there's a project that is within their purview. It's geographic, is my recollection. There's some concentric circles around the airport, and different standards apply to different areas. And so when I read this, it's really intended to put those standards in our zoning ordinance so that anybody who comes before us will be designing their project to that standard. And then when they go to the Airport Commission, we'll be able to say they're complying with your regulations, so it'll be a lot easier at that level as well.
Yeah, I think your other question was just on the composition of CCAG. What is CCAG? So it's the City and County Association of Governments. So it's our COG. And it's the review bodies, there's 2 levels. So it goes to a committee and then the full CCAG board. And the committee makes a recommendation. All of them are publicly noticed meetings. Any member of the public can attend them, and they're staffed, their composition is elected officials from different jurisdictions within the county.
And the airport is, with your hypothetical about an expanded use of the airport, the airport is county owned, and the county can declare itself exempt from our zoning, but I'm not aware of any plans changing their airport land use plan for San Carlos.
And then just to be clear, in addition to the process, if you look at the strike-through code section, right, it also has the requirement for this airport protection evaluation. We do that anyway, but it's just codifying it, right, as well as the noise evaluation and mitigation, and then the airport real estate disclosure notices. So those are already required, routinely enforced by real estate agents, but it's just formalizing it in the code. And then the odor flight notification requirement, that's a new one for new residential projects. And then FAA, we routinely do that as well. So I think the example of what changes is, as indicated, the airport wanted all of these items in our code, and I don't think we were aware of it at the time that the housing element zoning code was updated, because obviously it would have been pretty straightforward to put them all in at that time. So the project of 11 El Camino, for example, required to go through this process, even though they were fully compliant with the zoning code because of this inconsistency. Now, with this consistency, it won't be required anymore, but the project that you saw this evening, 501 Industrial, that height goes over the base zoning height, and it's a plan development ordinance, so it's a zoning change. Those projects will continue to go through the ALUCP review process.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Greg.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner Roof. Any follow-up? All good?
That's
Okay.
good for me.
Commissioner Castaneda?
No.
Okay. Commissioner Garvey? Okay, and none from me. No questions. Okay, thank you, Akanksha. Would anyone care to make it
A
this?
comment on this?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, of course. Nicole, are there any hands raised at this time?
No.
Okay, we'll give the public who might be listening a few seconds here. If you would like to make a public comment on this topic, please raise your hand now. And we have no one here in the audience that wishes to speak. So Nicole, any hands raised?
No.
Okay. And therefore, I think we're complete in our public comment.
I will make a motion that we close the public comment period.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. Commissioners, any follow-up comment before we consider the motion?
I do have just one comment, which is I'm thinking of this kind of like our objective design standards to make the process as transparent as possible to everybody as to, you know, what types of deals need to go through additional conformance. And so I appreciate this project to hopefully make it less necessary or less time consuming for some projects to move forward with the consistencies already found through our code, not through a separate meeting that they have to go to. And thank you for doing the cleanup work.
On a similar vein, Akanksha, thank you for, and to Lisa for clarifying that actually the items called out for, let's say, residential homeowners have been in place, and so these are not changes. We're just making it clear as part of this overall process, and so all very good. And for my part, I'm supportive. Would someone like to make this motion?
I can make this motion. I move that the Planning and Transportation Commission adopt the resolution recommending the City Council introduce an ordinance amending the City of San Carlos's Municipal Code, Title 18, zoning, sections 18.15, general site regulations, 18.21, performance standards, and 18.28, zoning clearance for consistency with the comprehensive airport land use compatibility plan for the environs of San Carlos Airport.
I'll second the motion.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Thank you, and thanks for getting us cleaned up again.
Yes.
We have an item of new business number 7, and this is the request to make a recommendation, I believe a primary person and a secondary person to present to the City Council for their choice to serve on the City of San Carlos's Centennial Advisory Committee. Do we have a presentation?
Through the chair, no, we do not have a PowerPoint slide presentation, although there is, for the record, a staff report in the packet. The request being made is that the Planning and Transportation Commission decide amongst itself to pick one person that would serve on the Centennial Advisory Committee. And the council is requesting that the commission pick one member as its as its first choice, and another member, not saying that they're the second choice, but a runner-up, I guess you could call it. And then those two names would be forwarded to the City Council on December 5th, I believe, and at that time, the council will make appointments to this committee.
Thank you, Lisa. And when we were together last, two things. First, Commissioner Castaneda was not with us, so we would appreciate in a minute hearing her perspective. The other one was there were a couple of questions. One was with regard to, let's say, a partial term or a split term because of some of the expiring tenure of some of us, and also if there was any clarity around the meetings just to help people plan and think about their participation. Do you have any input?
Yes. I'll start with the schedule of meetings. So the request for what the commitment would include would be to take part in meetings that would be tentatively held on the third Wednesday of each month. So that's the frequency is that they would be once a month. They would start in January next year, and they would take place as needed. My understanding is that these meetings would take place in the evening and can be held either in person or virtually. That's the information that is being shared with me at this time. So I reached out to our staff at Parks and Recreation, and they provided me with that additional information. As far as the appointments themselves, there is a strong desire to have a member, to have the Planning and Transportation Commission represented on this committee. So if it means that the recommendation is a partial one in consideration of two term limits that are coming up, potentially 3 to be determined, but that is something that's completely possible to do.
Thank you. Yeah. That's helpful. Commissioner Castaneda, your thoughts?
Well, I read the minutes from the last meeting, and a number of my fellow commissioners are on a lot of committees and quite busy, and I certainly would volunteer to serve in this position. I think this would be a fun thing to do.
Great, and your perspective would really help shape. So if I'm hearing you say, and if others agree, we would put your name forth as our first choice.
That would be fine.
Great. All right. Thank you for raising your hand for that. And then I think we need a second. And I think I need to look to Vice Chair Clements. You had some thoughts last time. Has the information helped you further your thinking?
The additional information is helpful. However, it still does not solve the problem where there is not really an alternate from our commission, and I do have required commitments in the evening sometimes for work, and they could be on these evenings. Also, it remains unclear as to whether it must be an in-person presence or a virtual or a hybrid. That remains unclear. So I would still be a little reluctant to commit because it wouldn't be as an alternate. If it were as an alternate, I would be happy to commit behind Commissioner Castaneda, but I don't think that's what is being asked for. There are 2 names being asked for, and then the council will select one as the designee, correct?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Commissioners Roof or Garvey, any other thoughts from last meeting based on the comments tonight?
Well, like I said last time, my term will be expiring, but I would be willing to be this second name, but I'd like to note that I fully endorse Commissioner Castaneda as the person to do this, and just allowing my name to be used as to fulfill the requirement that was strangely asked for, to have a second name. And so I could be that if the commission agrees.
Thank you, Commissioner Roof, and I would really appreciate that, and I know Commissioner Garvey would as well. She's continues to do so much with our RDRC, and I know it takes up quite a bit of her time. So, but please go ahead. You want to make a comment?
I also fully endorse Commissioner Castaneda and recognizing and also support Commissioner Roof as the alternate. And if the term limits, or it sounds like the term limits will come into effect for Commissioner Roof on July 1st, and at that point, my work with the Residential Design Review Committee will be winding down, and I'm happy to raise the issue again at that point and pick up as an alternate if that is needed.
Very good. So I think we have a recommendation. I would summarize to say, and also strongly endorse Commissioner Castaneda to represent us as a body, but also to be a great member of the city to help guide this. So as our first name, and put Commissioner Roof's name forward. We'll all note the conditions that he attached to that name, but and they seem appropriate, and would ask City Council to consider those, and therefore he would be our second name.
Thank you, Commissioners. I will forward those names on to the City Council.
Just a moment to be a stickler for formality. So first of all, I think we should ask for public comment, and then I think just a motion would be appropriate.
Very good. So for anyone who might still be participating from home, if you've been following this discussion, and if you have a comment, this is your opportunity to raise your hand on Zoom. And
no hands.
No hands. Okay, and we have no one here? So I would motion, therefore, that we close public comment.
I'll second that.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Yes.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes. Very good. I therefore motion that the Planning and Transportation Commission put forth the name of Commissioner Castaneda as our first name for participation on our Centennial Advisory Committee, and put forward David Roof's name as our second.
I'd second that motion.
Commissioner Castaneda?
Abstain.
Commissioner Garvey?
Yes.
Commissioner Roof?
Yes.
Vice Chair Clements?
Yes.
And Chair Iacoponi?
Yes.
Many thanks to Commissioner Castaneda, hopefully who will be representing us so ably.
Very good, thank you. Can I just check? I see item 8 here, and afterward, then we will have the opportunity for general public comment. Okay, very good. So item number 8, reports, correspondence, and general information. 8A, report on recent city council actions.
Yes, Chair and Commissioners, I would just like to report that City Council at its last meeting on October 23rd approved amendments to the zoning ordinance to address objective design standards for single-family residential projects, which would include also SB9 oriented projects as well. In addition, and as a separate item, they also approved amendments to the zoning ordinance with respect to accessory dwelling units, or ADUs, for compliance with state law, some cleanup, and some policy area recommendations. So both of those amendments were introduced. The second reading is scheduled for November 13th. Once those amendments have passed their second reading, they would become effective on December 13th. And that's all I have to share for City Council actions.
Thank you, Lisa. B.
Excuse me, Chair. Could I ask a question of Lisa?
Yes.
Thanks. Lisa, we made a recommendation when presented with the crosswalk proposal and the bulb out and a removal of parking at several spaces along the curb, and I'm blanking on the name of the street. Hilltop. thank you. I'm wondering if the city council took action on Hilltop.
I believe that's on the 13th is when that's going to be considered.
Thank you.
Thank you. B, Planning and Transportation Commission comments or reports. Colleagues, any comments? Commissioner Roof?
A question, maybe you were going to mention this. Last time you mentioned the housing element letter was expected from the state, and I'm just curious where we stand on that.
I was planning on doing that under D, but
So you
can I do
wait.
that under D?
You're welcome to wait till we get to D
great,
then.
great.
Very good. I actually have a comment, and this is a request for staff to consider making a presentation to the Planning and Transportation Commission at some later date regarding the array of TDMs that are currently in place, I'll say approved by this body maybe over the last 5 years, and so what is their status? How many do we have? And then in specific, are there any learnings from them that we should be thinking about as we consider future TDMs? It seems like I feel like I've approved a lot as part of development projects, and I would like to learn more about where they are, if anywhere. So that'd be a request.
If that's the pleasure of the commission, we can certainly bring that topic back.
So I should check. Other commissioners of interest?
That would be of interest.
Yeah.
Looks like everyone is nodding, so we can definitely bring that back. Thank you.
Great, thank you. C, correspondence.
No correspondence this evening?
Very good. And D, planning staff comments, reports, and updates of current projects.
Yes, Chair and Commissioners, and I'll go ahead and start with the housing element. So on October 24th, the city received its third letter from the State Department of Housing and Community Development concerning certification of the city's adopted housing element. The state is essentially requesting more information about how the city's new development standards or zoning standards for new development ensure that developments can reach maximum densities. So they're essentially asking for a much more robust investigation or proof that our zoning actually works. So we are going to be meeting with our housing consultant and hopefully be scheduling a meeting with HCD to find out exactly how much analysis they would like us to give them, recognizing that we had our first project that went under our new zoning approved, and that's 11 El Camino Real, which will be presented to the City Council as an informational item, I think at their next meeting. So essentially, that is our current status. If there is good news, I would say that's the last remaining item that we're being asked for by the state. So we are going to be working to address that because it is, again, our goal. We very much want a compliant housing element, but we are being asked for more information.
Chair, if I could ask staff a question. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that there is further inquiry. I always was hoping third time was the charm. And wanted to ask, is this part of the analysis that's required to basically justify that RHNA will be met through in calculating what the densities, what the actual number of units to be built? Is it part of the analysis of how you are showing that RHNA is attainable, given all of your assumptions?
It's not that. It's more does our new zoning ordinance, even with its current floor area ratio or FAR standards and other types of additional development requirements for upper story step backs, provisions for open space and all of these things, and our assumptions for the amount, the assumptions that go into our analysis for being able to reach maximum densities. They want more information from the city on that. So one of the things that the commission is aware of that we are working on are objective design standards, and we are going to be holding a study session in the very near future at your next meeting on November 20th. This is a study session on objective design standards specifically for mixed use and multifamily. In our housing element, we do have a program that commits to continual evaluation of our zoning ordinance and standards to ensure that there are no possible constraints to reaching those maximum densities. And I would say that through the odds process, those objective design standards, we are going to be looking at standards to make it much more clear about what is required and be proposing some refinements. So that's all I can say about that, but more of that will be shared at your next meeting. The letter is available on the project website, which is sancarlos2040.org. And there is a link to documents. So if any of the commissioners are interested in reading that letter, you can definitely find it. It's public information on the project website. So in addition to housing element news and updates, the Commission's next regular meeting is on November the 20th. And as I mentioned before, we have a study session on objective design standards for mixed use and multifamily projects. In addition to that, we have two projects scheduled, 549 and 575 Prospect. These are townhouse developments. On each site, there's a proposal to build 4 townhomes for a total of 8 total. That will be a public hearing item for the Planning Commission's consideration. And then on December 4th, at this time, we may have one item. It's looking pretty light. And on December 18th, there's no items yet. So I will be polling the commission via email as to your availability in the month of December. We just want to make sure that if there is anything on the agenda that we have a quorum, but I'll keep in close conversation with the commission because as of now, it could be that one of those meetings may be canceled. So we'll keep you posted. And then one thing you can mark on your calendars for sure is that the commission's first meeting in the new year will land on January 2nd. And our plans are to cancel that first meeting of the year. Unlike last year, when you recall, we came back right away and had to address the housing element. Everyone's remembering that. But this year we don't have something with such a high pressing deadline. So we'll be able to cancel that first meeting. And then the last thing I wanted to share with the commission and anyone who may be listening at home or catching the replay is that we're very excited to share that our next phase of community engagement for the downtown specific plan, we have 2 dates that have been set. One, we're providing 2 options for the community. One will be a virtual option and the other will be an in-person option. The virtual option will be Wednesday, December 6th in the evening, from 6 to 7:30, and then the in-person option will immediately follow that Saturday on December the 9th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we're very excited to share that it's looking like we'll be able to have that in-person event within a vacant storefront right in the heart of our downtown. So the lease is about to be signed, and as soon as it is, we'll be sharing that information. But yes, we have some very exciting ideas to share with the community, and we hope everybody comes out for that because it's such an exciting thing to be able to do is think about the future of our downtown and how it can be improved for all users. And I think that concludes all of my updates and reports under 8D.
Great, thank you, Lisa. I think that moves us to agenda item 9, which is public comment. At this time, anyone here in the audience and anyone following along remotely can raise an item not on this evening's agenda. The Commission may briefly respond to statements made or questions posed as allowed by the Brown Act, Government Code Section 54954.2. However, the Commission's general policy is to refer items to staff for attention or have a matter placed on a future Commission agenda for a more comprehensive action or report. So if anyone is in the audience and would like to make a comment on an item not on tonight's agenda, can you please raise your hand on Zoom now? And Nicole, are there any hands raised?
No.
Okay, we'll do another 10 seconds. And now?
No.
Okay, very good. Okay, then with that, our meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.